Hey folks, Jeff Thitoff here, the Jeff Thitoff Show. Thank you for tuning in. Creative name, right? Follow me on Twitter @ThitHappens. Also, go to our FanStreamSports.com webpage. Check that out. Great new stuff. We've updated everything on there. There's a lot of new programming we're adding, new bells and whistles. Go check it out, FanStreamSports.com. Follow me on Twitter @ThitHappens. Like, listen, subscribe, share all of our podcasts. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can find our stuff from FanStream Sports. And like I said, lots of great content being added every single day. Ohio State's got Penn State this weekend. And before the season started, when you could bet on the game as a futures type thing, you could take Ohio State laying probably 2.5 points in most sports books. And now that spread is up to over 20. I think it might be 20.5 now as we speak, where Ohio State is favored. And a lot of, obviously, you see Penn State's 3-4 this year, had some really tough losses, coaching change. Their starting quarterback, Drew Aller, out for the season. So Ohio State this week now takes on Penn State in Columbus. It's a noon kick, part of the big noon kickoff, I believe, for Fox leading into that game. And there's a lot being said. We'll get to the Penn State, the job, and how that's the, I guess, kind of the opening and where it ranks as far as the college football coach openings. But Ohio State's won 8 straight games in this series. And since Penn State won back in 2008, the Nittany Lions have won just twice. So wait, that's it, just 2 times. The one they'll try to tell you was the third one that Ohio State had to vacate. It wasn't really given as, I don't think, as a win to Penn State as much as a loss to Ohio State. But nonetheless, 2 times on the field since 2008. 2008 game, Penn State's knocked off Ohio State. And they won't play for a couple years after this. They will play next, I believe, in 2028. They won't play in 26 or 27. 2020 is the next time they're scheduled to play. And there's a lot of people up in arms about that because Ohio State and Penn State have played every single year since they joined the Big Ten back in the early, mid-1990s, I guess it would have been, early 1990s, anyways, when they joined the Big Ten. And I understand why. I understand why fans are like, oh, this should be a game they play every year. I'm not as big on that. And part of that is because of Ohio State's domination of the rivalry, for one thing, or in the game, I should say, on one hand. But Penn State just doesn't do it for me like they did before. When they first joined the Big Ten, Joe Paterno and Penn State were a big deal. And they were consistently among the top 5 teams in the country from their independent status, and they flirted with the Big East for a while and did that. But Penn State was a big deal when they got into the Big Ten, and they had some good years early on. They really did. It's not the same Penn State. Like Nebraska. And I know Nebraska's on a much lower level than Penn State, but Nebraska comes into the Big Ten with all this hype, all these years of national championship contending teams. And Nebraska has been hot garbage for the most part in the Big Ten. So the Michigan game, yes, that's got to stay. Don't mess with that. Don't mess with the Ohio State-Michigan game. As far as the other, I'd rather see Ohio State play Oregon every year than Penn State. I'd rather see them play USC every year than Penn State, at least for the near future. I've seen enough Penn State games in my life with Ohio State. It doesn't need to be an every year thing. I know in the Big Ten went to the scheduling with this new, when they had everyone added now, the 18 teams and all of this, and they gave every team a chance to list a couple of protected rivalries that they wanted to have, where if all that the plan would be to have, if you picked a couple of teams to be your rivals, to be your protected ones, you would have them every single year. Ohio State submitted Michigan and Penn State. Penn State submitted no one. Penn State has no designated rival or designated protected game on their schedule because they did not select Ohio State or Michigan or USC or anybody else. And I understand why they did it, but I just don't think Ohio State, Penn State doesn't have the same, anywhere near the same vibe to me as Ohio State, Michigan, or Ohio State, USC, or Ohio State, Oregon. I'd much rather see those games every year, at least for the next 10 years or so. But who knows what's going to happen with college football, how it's going to look differently in 10 years anyway. Ohio State should have won this game easily. I know Penn State's got good running backs. They've had a week off to prepare for Ohio State. A lot of people go, look, Penn State and Jim Knowles, the defensive guru who knows Ohio State's personnel. He gets an extra week to prepare. He has 2 full weeks almost to get ready for this. Guess what? Ohio State also had a bye week. So talent's going to win out. And Penn State's defense might slow down Ohio State, but Penn State's offense is not going to disrupt Ohio State at all. Penn State will be lucky to get 10 points in this game, I think. If they get 10, they should consider that very good for themselves. I think Ohio State wins this game and covers easily. There's the other subplot about Ryan Day going against Jim Knowles and vice versa. Jim Knowles, the former DC, won a national championship here last year with the Buckeyes and then bolted for Penn State to become the highest paid coordinator in college football. And it's just kind of the way that Knowles left. He left like 3 days or whatever after the championship. Shortly after the championship game is when he left. He didn't participate in any of the celebrations. The big assembly, I guess you call it, or celebration of the championship over at the Horseshoe. He was not part of that. And he made some comments at Penn State about the culture, how it was different in a positive way at Penn State than it was at Ohio State. And no doubt about it, Jim Knowles butted heads with some people at Ohio State. He and Larry Johnson, absolutely, the defensive line coach, they absolutely butted heads, especially after that Oregon game when Larry Johnson wanted to do certain things differently when Ohio State could not get any kind of pressure whatsoever on Oregon and Dylan Gabriel. And they fought on that one. And I believe Ryan Day eventually intervened from what I've heard and gave Johnson a little more power, I think, than Jim Knowles wanted him to have. So there's that side point about it as well. Ryan Day has been completely professional leading into this game. He has let a couple things slip. He's given a lot of praise to Penn State's roster, a lot of praise to Jim Knowles. And he did say something the other day, though, where like he was asked if he's talked to Jim Knowles since Knowles left. And he said he hasn't. And he likened it to like, sometimes you have a breakup and, it doesn't work out. And so you break up with somebody. It doesn't mean you're going to keep talking to them. And he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, we try to stay on the up and up, the professional level side of things and not think about it, but we're only human. I hope that means Ohio State hangs 50 on them. I hope they run up the score on Penn State. And no offense to the Penn State fans or the Penn State kids who are from Ohio and whatnot. Grunkemeyer, the quarterback of Penn State's from very close by to the university and grew up here wanting to play for Ohio State. But I would just like to see Ohio State send a message in this game. Open it up, get the offense rolling, and get a big win over Penn State on Saturday at the Horseshoe. So something I want to talk about, though, also, I mentioned the Penn State-Ohio State thing and how they Penn State didn't put any kind of like protected rivalries on their list when they were submitting to the Big Ten. And so much of the college football playoff rankings, which is going to come out on November 4th. The first one comes out November 4th after this week's games. And the way teams are scheduled now, the way games are scheduled by the conferences is going to play such a huge role in how we evaluate teams. It's not Ohio State's fault that Texas has not been as good as people thought they would be. That's probably the best win still on Ohio State's schedule. Texas comes in at ranked 20th. Ohio State beat them 14-7. Texas was number 1. Remember that game? Ohio State was 3. Ohio State's other really good win, I guess, at Washington. They beat Washington 24-6, and Washington's now 6-2, not ranked, probably should be. Ohio State's only remaining game against team with winning record is Michigan. Yes, Ohio State can be blamed and faulted for scheduling Grambling State and OU. That's a fair gripe. But as far as the rest of the schedule goes, it's not Ohio State's fault that Oregon and Indiana are not on their schedule this year, or that USC, who's having a good season, is not on their schedule. That's something out of their hands. So how do you judge that? Sure, Ohio State, 7-0, number 1 in the country. Indiana's 8-0. They've got the best win of the season among any college football team, I contend, when they won in Eugene against Oregon. That's the best win. Oregon, by the way, is now number 6. They've climbed back up a little bit after the loss to Indiana, but that's really the most impressive win, I think, on anyone's schedule. Does that make Indiana better than Ohio State? Should they be ranked higher than Ohio State? Texas A&M, they're 3rd. They're 8-0. They've won at Notre Dame, who's now ranked 12th. They still have to play Missouri and Texas. They're ranked 19th and 20th. How about Alabama? Alabama's 7-1. Their loss to Florida State still looks bad, but since the opener, they've beaten Georgia, who's ranked 5th, Vandy, who's 9th, Tennessee, 14th, and Missouri, 19th. Those are some big wins for them. And so when you look at it, the committee's going to look at it. I don't know how much, if they're going to penalize teams for their conference schedule that they had no role in playing. And I don't know how you balance that. It used to be when the Big Ten had 10 teams, you played everybody. And so there was not a big discrepancy in your schedule typically because you played everybody in the conference. It's not the same anymore. There's going to be a lot of randomness in it. And I'm curious to see how the committee justifies all of that, especially later in the season now. Think about this. There are 5 undefeated teams in the top 25. 2 from the Big Ten, Ohio State and Indiana. You've got 1 from the SEC with A&M. You've got 1 from the Big 12 with BYU, 1 from the ACC and Georgia Tech, and also Navy. Those schools, and Navy's unranked, those schools are all undefeated. Navy's got a couple of tough games coming up, though. They'll have a big one with Notre Dame. You've got 12 teams in the top 25 that have 1 loss. 12 of the teams in the top 25 have 1 loss. 4 SEC teams, 3 ACC, 3 Big 12, a Big 10, and 1 from the American Conference in Memphis. You got 8 with 2 losses. You're going to have a lot of schools with 1 or 2 losses that you've got to decide, is this 2-loss team better than this 1-loss team? Is this 2-loss team more deserving than this 1-loss team? And that's going to be the struggle with the committee, is figuring out how to not penalize the teams that had a random conference schedule that wasn't as good, while also not penalizing a team with a tougher conference schedule that they had no control over. And that's going to be the trick with all of this. With the bigger conferences now, it's hard to tell, because you will have, like, Ohio State's schedule this year, I will tell you, is weak. It's a weak schedule. It's all said and done when you look at it. Compared to some of the SEC schedules. I know there's SEC bias. This is not an SEC bias thing, though, that I'm talking about. This is, I truly believe that Ohio State's schedule, I wish it were better. It's not. I still think Ohio State's the best team in the country. Are they the most deserving number 1 team? Ryan Day has said all along, Ohio State, their biggest opponent every single week is Ohio State. They are chasing last year's national championship. They've done a damn good job so far. We'll see if that continues this week when they host Penn State. Then they get a couple of cupcakes with Purdue, UCLA, Rutgers. Purdue's on the road to West Lafayette. Not that that matters. UCLA and Rutgers, both in the horseshoe. Not that matters. Before they close out with the game against Michigan. And then I'm hoping we get to see Ohio State against Indiana, a 1-versus-2 game potentially in the Big Ten championship game. All right. Matt Rule has signed a 2-year extension at Nebraska, which is giving off the vibe that he is not a candidate for the Penn State job. I'm not totally convinced that's the case, but his buyout increases from $5 million to $15 million now. The deal adds 2 years on to his current deal. 2030 is the last year of the deal he had before. Gets paid $12.5 million, and then 31 and 32, the same deal, $12.5 million. So the way it looks now is that Matt Rule's interested in staying there at Nebraska. But look, Penn State paid $50 million to James Franklin to not coach. What will they pay to get Matt Rule to coach? I don't know. Interesting timing on it, though, because Matt Rule, since he got to Nebraska, is 0-18 against ranked teams. Nebraska has lost their last 28 games to ranked teams. This weekend, Penn State is hosting a ranked USC team. USC is ranked, I think, 22nd, but they're nonetheless, they have a chance to stop those trends that they have right now. Matt Rule, a big one for him. But they signed the contract now, the extension now. Why not wait a week? And I don't know who. I'd be curious to know who was pushing to get it done right now, because Matt Rule, if he were to get a win this week against USC, I contend he could get more money than Nebraska was offering at this point in time, or more money. It might say, you know what, my stock is pretty high right now. What's Penn State got to say? If they get blown out by USC this week, Nebraska fans are going to be like, what the hell? We just gave this guy all this money, and all of a sudden, Matt Rule's not as attractive maybe to other schools as well, or maybe can't get the kind of money he thinks he should be able to get. But $12.5 million over the last 3 years of the deal now. Right now, he's ranked in the top 15 in coaching salaries. If Matt Rule wanted to bet on himself, I think he should have held off on signing the contract, the extension. I don't know if Nebraska said, hey, you got to sign it now or it's not going to be here, maybe in a week, depending on what happens. But it just seems to me like it was a not the best idea maybe for Matt Rule to sign it, unless he's not confident in what's going to happen this weekend in Lincoln when the ranked USC Trojans come to town. The LSU job now, that looks a lot less attractive thanks to their governor. It was Governor Jeff Landry came out and said, I'm sure you've heard this by now, that LSU's acting AD at the time, Scott Woodward, was not going to be the one to hire the head coach. He said, Landry, I can tell you right now, Scott Woodward's not selecting our coach. And he ripped the fact that, Woodward fired Kelly with all this money he's owed. And Woodward was also there when he gave Jimbo Fisher, the big contract at A&M. So he's made a couple of swings and misses on football. He's done well in basketball and things like that. I know he did some good things at LSU as far as women's basketball hires. But after the governor said that, Scott Woodward and LSU decided to part ways. There was no way he could possibly be able to maintain that job without any kind of backing. And it's interesting that the governor gets involved in this. Now, the governor didn't hold a press conference. Landry didn't hold a press conference to talk about football. Let's talk about other things. He was asked about the football program. And he made a joke like, maybe we'll let President Trump pick it. But he just said we're going to be more fiscally responsible. Here's the interesting thing about this. By the way, LSU's interim AD is Verge Ausberry. That's a real name. Don't know if it's a man or a woman. I'm just telling you. It is a man. I just saw a quote. Verge Ausberry is the interim AD at LSU. He said, we're going to hire the best football coach there is. That's our job. We're not going to let this program fail. LSU has to be in the playoffs every year in football. There's 12 teams that make it. It's going to expand here. We have to be one of those teams at LSU, no substitute, giving, of course, the hint there that the 16-team playoff is not that far away. Okay, so Ausberry's going to be part of the process and the main part in hiring the next head coach. But when the governor does what he did, that does make the job, I would think, a little bit less attractive. And maybe money solves all of that. I don't know how much money they have to pay somebody after they're paying this buyout here to Brian Kelly. But what's interesting to me is after the loss this past weekend, Brian Kelly, he had met with Woodward about this, with Scott Woodward, and Scott Woodward wanted Brian Kelly to fire Joe Sloan, the offensive coordinator there at LSU. He's a play caller, and the LSU offense has sucked this year. Think about all the promise coming in, how they were talked about, regarded as a potential national championship contender and all of this. Well, basically Woodward said to Brian Kelly, you've got to fire Joe Sloan. And Kelly said, I don't want to do that. I'd like to make some other changes. And then Kelly gets fired. And I wonder what would happen. What would have happened if Kelly would have agreed to do it? Would he still be the head coach? Would LSU have still pulled the trigger on it? Because if the only reason they're firing Kelly, if that's like the main, if that was the straw that broke the camel's back, that means that Kelly very easily could still be employed by LSU right now. And the way they're talking about LSU and Brian Kelly, there's nothing positive coming from it. There's a lot of anonymous people within the organization, players within the coaching staff and former coaches with Brian Kelly that have said nothing but negative things about the time Brian Kelly was at LSU. And so, but think about it. He could still be the head coach there if he had fired the offensive coordinator like he was asked to do, like it was demanded upon him by the then AD Woodward. As far as who will take the LSU job, and the Florida job being open now as well, Lane Kiffin's name's going to get thrown around a lot. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. It'll be an interesting case study to see how the buyouts, what happens with this next wave of coaches getting hired at Florida, LSU, Penn State. I think Florida State will end up getting a new coach as well. Auburn could have it be in the market nonetheless. But to see if the ADs, if the presidents, if they have any more caution when it comes to the big buyouts after what's happened with James Franklin, what happened obviously with Jimbo Fisher, with Brian Kelly, what could happen with Luke Fickell at Wisconsin, all of those things. I'm curious to see if there will be a change in the way these contracts are constructed, or if one school just says, like a couple schools might say, yeah, we're not going to give you a huge buyout. Another might say, hell with it. We want this guy. We're going to get him. One of the guys that will be interesting to watch will be Clark Lee from Vanderbilt. He might be the highest coach out there right now, and outside of Lane Kiffin. And Diego Pavia is his stud quarterback who's already had 6 years of eligibility. I mean, he didn't play all 6 years, but he's been in college for 6 years. He petitioned to get another year this year from the NCAA, and he's petitioning for a 7th year for next year. If Diego Pavia gets that 7th year and Clark Lee moves on to LSU or Penn State or Florida, will it be a package deal? And I think we'll see things like that start to happen more. You might see the quarterback go first and then the coach later, but I think there's a real possibility because if Clark Lee left and said, I'm taking the LSU job, Pavia then has a window where he can transfer even outside of the transfer portal. He could wait till long after the season, knowing that if Clark Lee says, look, man, I'm taking the LSU job, then we will see what happens then if Pavia then would end up doing that. So it'll be interesting to see What happens to Clark Lee? What happens to Lane Kiffin? These jobs, because some jobs, look, like I said, the LSU job, I thought when he first was open, it was the best job out there. I don't know if it's the best job. It might be. Penn State's up there as well. Probably Florida is third. All right, let's talk NFL now. Lamar Jackson came back last night after his injuries, threw 4 touchdowns and a 28-6 win over Miami. Did not run much. I think he had like 3 carries for 14 yards, but that's okay. Baltimore, look, as far as I'm concerned now, Baltimore is now in the lead in the AFC North. I know they're not. Pittsburgh's still on top at 4-3. Baltimore is 3-5. But Baltimore right now is a much more dangerous team. Look at the way Pittsburgh's played lately. The loss to Green Bay, the loss to Cincinnati, which never should have happened. Their defense looks terrible. I think Baltimore is now the betting favorite to win the AFC North. And the win over Miami last night was significant for them. And I'm curious, who are the best teams in the NFL? And I looked through this. Obviously the top 7 in each conference get in. The 4 division winners and then 3 wild cards. And the 3 wild cards can be where they can be second, third, or fourth place, whatever, in their divisions. But the 3 best teams after the division winners, the 3 in the standings, they get to go to the playoffs as well. And so you would think typically in a perfectly balanced year, you would have the 4 division winners in the AFC and 3 second place teams. But I want you to look at the third place teams right now as we're in week 9. In the East, it's pretty standard. New England's 6-2, Buffalo's 5-2. They're going to end up winning, be the top 2 teams of the division. They'll both make the playoffs. In the AFC South, you've got Indy with a 2.5 game lead over Jacksonville, but Houston, who's in third, might be a bigger threat to the Colts than Jacksonville. So Houston's a third place team in their division. I think is a very real threat to win that division. Baltimore, the third place team in the AFC North, also a very real threat to win that division. Who's third in the AFC West? It's not the Chargers. They're first. It's not the Broncos. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, technically third in the division, tied with Denver as far as record goes. But if you look at the standings, they are third. Kansas City, Houston, Baltimore, all third place teams. And I think at least 2 of them, maybe all 3, will make it to the postseason. I think they will jump over the teams that are in second place right now. In the AFC North, it's Cincinnati. I think the Ravens jump them and probably jump Pittsburgh and get to 1. Houston, I think, jumps Jacksonville and has a real chance to the playoffs. Kansas City, I think, is the best team in the AFC right now, even though they struggled this year, but they got everyone back now. You've got Patrick Mahomes. Don't bet against them. The third place teams in the NFC, it includes the Commanders, Bears, Falcons, and Niners. Commanders, Niners, both damn good teams. Bears, a dangerous team. So look at these third-place teams. Other news, by the way. Health is going to decide, and it's interesting, we talk about the NFL, and there's still talk about adding an 18th game, taking away a preseason game, and do they care about player health? I don't think the NFL truly cares about player health. I think it's necessary to say they do. As fans, do you care about player health? Do you care about player safety? If you felt that strongly about it, wouldn't you just stop watching the NFL? So I consider and tell you, yes, I want the players to be safe, but we don't want it to be flag football. It's a different product if you keep making it advantageous, like the quarterbacks, the way they can't hit quarterbacks now. If I'm someone like Steve Young and I'm watching, or Joe Montana, and I'm watching today's game, I'm like, my God, I would love to have those kind of advantages as a quarterback, those kind of safety things. But health is going to decide this year's postseason berths more than most years, I think. So we'll keep an eye on that. But for people to say that, look, I don't go to 18 games and all this, I'll tell you the other thing too. If they go to 18 games, we'll get our wish of having the Super Bowl on President's Day weekend, where we get the Monday off because it's a federal holiday and we have the game on Sunday. Regardless, I think the NFL, this has been my long time. If you've listened to me on the radio or listened to me here in podcasts, I've probably said it a million times. I'm going to say it 1,000,001. The Super Bowl should be played on Saturday. If you're going to keep the Super Bowl where it's the week before President's Day and all that, I understand why you have all the time off, why there's the week in between championship games and Super Bowl. They have the extra week in there because they want both teams to be as healthy as possible, put the best product on the field on the most watched game of the season. I'm all in favor of that. But you don't need a full 2 weeks. Play it on Saturday. You take one less day off. You start that game on Saturday night. Hell, you can start at 8 o'clock if you want to. Start the game later than you normally would anyway. People stay and watch it because they won't have to work, most of America, the next day. It'd be great for bars and restaurants, who all of a sudden now people more likely to stay out later on a Saturday night and finish watching the game if the next day is Sunday versus if it's a Sunday, and the next game they got to drag their asses into work. It seems like a no-brainer to me. I've been talking about the Saturday thing for years. I think Dan Patrick also does. I'm not going to say he stole it from me, but I don't know who said it first. But if you got to do that, at least move it to that President's Day weekend. I talked about the injuries. Travis Hunter today was placed on IR, which means out for at least 4 weeks. Jacksonville, not sure if he's going to play this year or not. He had a knee injury, suffered in practice. Said it was a non-contact injury. Think about it. The trade that was made on draft day, Cleveland ended up giving up the number 2 pick and a 4th and a 6th. Number 2 overall, 104 overall, and 200 overall to Jacksonville for 1st, 2nd, and 4th round selections, 5, 36, 126, and a 2026 first round selection as well. This trade looks like a steal right now for the Browns. Travis Hunter, he finally had his first good offensive game over there in London, where he had a touchdown against the Rams in the 35-7 loss. He ended up with 8 catches for 101 yards, 14 targets in that game. But that was his best game of the season, and he did not look good or effective on offense. He was good on defense, but still, it was a big price to pay for Jacksonville. Other injury news: Jaden Daniels looks like he's going to come back to play for Washington this week. He missed last week. He missed a couple weeks earlier in the season, and Washington could use him this week. They are playing. He's got a game on Sunday against Seattle, a big game for them, a Sunday night game. Terry McLaurin's already ruled out for them for Washington in this game. So getting Jaden Daniels back will be big. He practiced on Friday, 3rd straight day he practiced. He didn't play in their last game when they got rolled by Kansas City on that Monday night. Daniels missed that game, and he also missed 2 other games this season with sprained left knee. Other news, the Spencer Rattler era might be over in New Orleans before it even gets started. Tyler Shuck, a 2nd-round pick, 40th overall in this year's draft, has been named the starter for the rest of the season. Like I say, the rookie, 40th overall pick, 2nd round of this year's draft. The Miami Dolphins, who look awful. They just made a change. A general manager, Chris Greer, is out. And Mike McDaniel, they say, will keep his position at least through the season. I think McDaniels gets fired as soon as the season ends. And it'll be one of those Black Monday firings where you have probably 4 or 5 different coaches at least get fired. Miami's, it's interesting. All the things Mike McDaniels people loved about him, Dolphins fans, was when they were winning, and how he's kind of a weird guy, kind of quirky, but was looked at as an offensive genius. And now they're losing, and some of it isn't as fun as it was before. So it's going to be a good weekend, college football. I know there's not as many marquee games, but there are still some good ones out there that will play a big role in the playoff. A lot of elimination games, that USC-Nebraska game. If Nebraska has any sights on making the playoff, they've got to win out. And that might not even get them in, but they need to do that. That's one of the elimination games. And there's a few more going on, so keep an eye on that. We'll talk again next week, folks. Follow me on Twitter, @ThatHappens. Go to fanstreamsports.com. Check out the website. Lots of new stuff we are adding every single day. Have a great weekend.